Hey Nikki, let's take a look at your project too then and see if we can get that straightened out and have it be a bit more successful. Okay, number one, let's start with the instructions about the project itself. We were looking for something in the neighborhood of 5 pages, and honestly, I would have troubles. In fact, having an assignment like this and limiting it to 5 pages would be miserable for me. Okay, so you've left 3.5 or more pages, okay, available. And so we need to work on a few things. And so let's talk about the paper itself and the structure. First, you should have, your identifying information. You don't necessarily need a cover page. Some people would use that. Cover page would not count as part of the 5 pages, but at least at the very top, your name and what the class is for, when you're submitting it, those types of things, right? Probably about 3 or 4 lines with that information. Okay, then just overall, this needs to be in a paper format. I want you to write a paper. Part of the reason for doing this is so that I can analyze and critique and provide constructive criticism for your writing abilities. So put it in that format. You've got it in kind of a semi-outline paper. I don't even know what to describe this format as. Okay. Then, you need a good full paragraph that's an introduction. And in an introduction, you always need to tell me what you're going to tell me. Okay, so tell me, the basics of what's going to be in your paper, which I've basically given you, right? You're going to tell me about the history of the company. You're going to tell me about the strategy of the company. And you're also going to tell me about the industry in which it competes. And then finally, and most importantly, you're going to spend time on the finances, because this is a business finance course. And so a good and the biggest portion of your project should focus on the finances of the company. Okay? So you've kind of gotten into it a little bit, right? You got a few lines here about the history. But you can't tell me that there's not a more rich and vibrant history to Barnes & Noble than just the 3 or 4 lines that you have there. This is a company that's been around since 1886. I don't see anything in there in the history about how they've gone to online, the Nook, going to bookstores, college bookstores, and those types of things, right? And so there's just a ton of history that you've left out. That should be a relatively easy thing to write, and it should be a few paragraphs, I would think. Okay, and strategy, you've got that they're running on a multi-channel strategy. These then are not strategies. That multi-channel could be that's their marketing strategy, not necessarily their strategy. Okay, but they are multi-channel. Okay, I do admit that, because they've got versus Amazon, which is strictly the internet, right? They've got bricks and mortar bookstores, and they do some online, and they do several of those things, right? And so you could certainly explain that a little bit better, right? What's the multi-channel mean, and how's that divided up, and what are they focusing on, and where are they going? Okay, utilize what, expand where, drive, I don't have any idea. Infrastructure, use the existing infrastructure. Are they planning to build an infrastructure? Is that the online or net internet infrastructure, or is this their bricks and mortar infrastructure, right? Continue to grow, that would be, I think, more like resume or start growing again, because this is a company that's been in decline, right, for quite some time. Okay, and then so we got history. You don't even tell me, I don't think, any place in here about the industry in which it competes, right? Okay, it competes in a rapidly changing industry, and 30 years ago it competed against mom and pop bookstores, and probably did fairly well when it came up as a bookstore, and there might have been some other major bookstores that it competed against, and then it and Amazon ended up in kind of head to head, and then Amazon, because Amazon originally started out as a book retailer, and that was just about it, right? And then Amazon took off and started retailing everything, and now you've got Barnes and Noble, which is well, it's Barnes and Noble, right? And it's tried to compete, and it's really had some difficulties. And so you could talk certainly about the industry and where it was, and we'll take a look at some stuff about the industry too when we take a look at the financials. Okay, then you got to devote some stuff. Okay, you've given me just the very most basic financial information, and very little of that as it is. Okay, and so you need to, again, and it needs to be in a narrative format or a written format, paragraphs of financial information, and this is an old and storied company that the financial information is easy to come by. I mean, it's stock full of it, and unfortunately in this case it's a company that's been kind of going backwards. So my favorite site, as I've said often, is this Morningstar site. So you should go find Morningstar, just Google it or Bing it, and there you go, and you get to the main page that should look like this, and maybe you've used Morningstar. By the way, I don't think that you cited any sources of information either, and that's a part of the paper too, right? So remember, you got to have the introduction. Tell me what you're going to tell me. Then in the body of the paper, you're going to tell me. Then you also have to have a conclusion where you tell me what you told me. And all of that, you ought to be able to get into 5 pages. If you went a little over, I wouldn't mind, but being a page and a third isn't going to get her done. So this is kind of the basic information that you gave me, which is, it's all current, which in my mind is, it's not irrelevant, but it's irrelevant unless it's related to things that have happened, let's say, in the past, right? Again, this is a company that's gone through some travails here recently. I can scroll down if my computer will let me. I can scroll down here, and my computer's going to go into funky mode, so hopefully we'll get that. There we go. Now it scrolls too fast. There's some information over here which is kind of cool. Here's competitors for Barnes and Noble, right? Look at that. They're considered to be competitors to Amazon, to eBay, to Alibaba, which just went public. Rakuten, I don't know what that is. It's an ADR, so it's a foreign company. And you can click more, and it would bring you up a whole page. Okay, and you might find some, if you looked at them, that are more directly related to Barnes and Noble. Maybe they do have some bricks and mortar types of stores. I don't know. It should give us a full page here. We'll take a look. So, and my computer's kind of slow, so I apologize for that. But there they are. Look at that. Alibaba is actually bigger than Amazon. Wow, because this is market cap. Several in here that just don't fit, as you can see. O'Reilly Automotive, I don't think that fits. A lot of these just don't fit. Okay, and you can look at it and you can just tell, that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit, that doesn't fit. And so almost none of these fit. Amazon's probably the closest in terms of what they actually do, but look how much bigger Amazon is as compared to Barnes and Noble, and Alibaba too. And Alibaba is fairly new. It's a Chinese company, actually bigger. Look at that, bigger than Amazon right now in terms of its market cap. That's pretty impressive. But anyhow, back to Barnes and Noble. So we'll go back. Okay, your conversation about the industry is probably going to be a little bit limited, because it truly is kind of, I hate to say this, but it's a little bit like Blockbuster was. If you can remember Blockbuster 6, 8, 10 years ago, it was a video rental place. Or Hastings was a bookstore video rental place, and we see kind of what happened to them as the internet formats completely took over, right? Okay. you gave me a little of this information, and that's fine, but we get into some of this, and this is fine. You could look at this, and I do like to glance at it, but it's fairly limited, whereas I can come up here and I can click on financials, okay, and that's going to give me a little bit more detail. Okay, it gives me 5 years worth of, in this case I'm on the income statement. I can also look at the balance sheet and the cash flow, and we'll probably look at both of those. Okay, I can look at it in terms of dollars or percents, and we're going to look at dollars first. I can also do it as referenced to 1. If revenue is all 1, I think is how that would be. Okay, but we can go back, to 2010. Yeah, from 2010, revenue actually has gone up a little bit, 2012 being the big year, but 2012, 2013, 2014, it's decreased, right? And, cost of revenue, here looking at the dollars is kind of fine, but I don't know if that does enough for me. Here, this is kind of cool, that even though revenue's decreased here in 2014, it's actually making a bigger gross profit than it did in 2013. So they're doing some things right, and the percentages are going to tell us a little bit more, right? Okay. Earnings per share, that's not so good, right? They were positive back 5 years ago, but negative, 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 negative. Trailing 12 months is what this is. TTM is trailing 12 months, and so and their year end is in April, and so in fact they would have just had a year end. But they probably haven't quite reported yet. Certainly would not have when you had written the paper, but look at that, maybe actually a positive. Okay, maybe they'll end up the year with a positive, and certainly they've improved radically from here to here. Okay, talking about that improvement's going to be huge, right, in terms of, and again, we'll look at percentages. So if we look at their sales, look at their cost of revenue, 71. They've taken it from 75 last year down to 70. So what have they done? They've improved their cost of goods sold. They've actually lowered a little bit, which is good. Their operating expenses have gone up, on the other hand, a smidge. Okay, but even so, their operating income's positive. Less than 1%, which isn't very good. But it's positive, as compared to the last 3 years. Okay, a little bit of income before income tax. Again, not much. They did have some other expense there, but the trailing 12 months, and in your case, this might be worth looking at because they've really improved here. Okay, they've got an operating income that's all the way up to, what did they do today? Yep, they lowered their cost of revenue again, or their cost of goods sold. So they've improved their gross profit, even just a smidge more. Okay, their sales and general administrative, other operating, so about the same, actually a smidge up, but nevertheless they got a little better operating income, and so it's pretty cool. They've come down and they've made some absolute improvements there, which is really nice. Okay, and they've managed to do that while kind of maintaining revenue, so that's kind of important. So you kind of need to talk about, again, going back to the dollar signs here, what's happened to revenue and why. Okay, why were they able also then to reduce their cost of revenue, or their cost of goods sold? Okay, jumped up. Certainly it jumped up in 2013. We might have talked about that, but why were they able to get that down there? Okay, their operating expenses have actually gone up a little bit. That's a little bit disappointing. I would have hoped that they made some great improvements there. If they'd have improved here, they could have maybe added another % or two, which would have been nice, right? Okay, I'm going to switch back to dollars, and I want to go look at their balance sheet. Let's see if they're doing some things there. Okay, all of this too, I'm just talking about the basics. Okay, you won't be able to do a good job on your report unless you go look at the annual reports that these companies put out and read about the management discussion, okay, of the finances and whatnot, because those are just hugely important. They tell you why a lot of those things have happened. So here's the company, right? They've they did a nice job, look at that, of reducing their inventories. That's a huge thing. That might be one of the reasons their cost of revenue actually decreased. It's very possible. Okay, so you might want to look at that. Total cash really jumped up, so they obviously generated some cash. I would definitely want to discuss that. It's gone from there. Look at that. In the last 3 years, their cash has gone up by 6 times. That's huge for a company that's bleeding, but they're accumulating some cash, and so we've got some good things happening there. They don't own a lot of land. You know, they probably rent most of their locations, I would guess, you know, in malls and those types of things. We got, you know, decent amount of stuff there. It hasn't really changed too much. It looks like, you know, nothing exciting. Total assets have decreased, you know. I mean, not much, but decreased a bit along here. And total liabilities, same thing, you know, it's decreased in the last year or two. Okay, so they haven't made tons of changes on their balance sheet, okay, other than this. It's accumulated a decent amount of cash, and so talking about how that cash, how they've come by that cash is maybe kind of huge. You might want to go look at the cash flow statement, right? It might kind of tell us. So I'm just glancing to see if there's some other things here that were kind of exciting, but not a lot. You know, common stock outstanding, retained earnings, treasury stock. You know, total stockholders' equity has had a significant and continuing decline. Okay, so they reduced total assets, but they also reduced total liabilities. So I'm kind of meandering here, but you know, the total stockholders' equity, look at that, just an absolute steady decline. Okay, that's a huge negative, right? Huge negative. Okay? And talking about why, well, here's why. Because retained earnings, they've been eating up their retained earnings, right? Additional paid-in capital basically stays the same, you know, it doesn't change a lot, but they have eaten up retained earnings, and that's what's caused their total equity to decrease. Why were they able to bump up their cash flow? Let's take a look at that. Investments in the property, okay, so they've made net cash, net change in cash, cash at the beginning, cash at the end, operating cash flow, capital expenditure. Well, that's the trailing 12 months. Here's this jump up. So let's take a look at 2014. So they had a loss, but depreciation and amortization kind of adds back in. Look at that. Huge benefits in reducing inventories. So they've done a really nice job of reducing their inventories, and that's probably one of the bigger reasons. Now here they had some prepaid expenses. Here they had other working capital, but just little little pluses here, right? Their depreciation and amortization, just a non-cash expense that doesn't really change too much, but some little ones through here. Investment, asset impairment, they probably sold some properties off, you know, they had a positive for that, positive there, but the big deal is the positive in inventories. So I would get in and look at their inventory management and tell me what they've done there, because that's a huge deal. When you go back and you look at the numbers on the balance sheet, the inventory, you know, maybe doesn't look all that huge, but they have managed that extremely well. Here's what I'm talking about. Inventories went from 1.5 down to 1.4, and they're now at 1.2. Okay, and so that's been a huge benefit in terms of the cash flow. One of the main reasons they're up to that amount that they were in 2014. The years are kind of, because this doesn't have on the balance sheet, it doesn't have the trailing 12 months, right? So it's just got the 2014, and so the years are a little bit funky here that you got to look at. But so yeah, they've gained, you know, 300, and I mean it's all right there, 320 million almost in cash flow by reducing their inventories. So again, you need to talk more about that. You know, how are they reducing their inventories? You know, are they discounting things in? Are they, you know, having people come in with trucks and haul it away to the dump? I don't know. Okay, but they've obviously done an effective job of reducing their inventories, and so you need to tell me about that. Okay. Make sure you click on like filings. Because this will take you, it should take you to oh, how come it took me to bonds? I don't want to go to bonds. I'm going to go look at filings. This should show me where their annual reports are, right? It's generally one of the easier ways to find the annual reports, if it will actually take me there. Well, it is. It's, although that says bonds, these are the filings. Huh. Boy, that is just kind of weird. So I can come and I can take a look. Here's an annual report for 2011. I can come up here and I can actually go through the pages. I could go even back further if I wanted to. There's an annual report for 2010, 2009. Okay, but we might want to look look at the most recent one, and I think we can open that up right here. Okay, and this takes a bit of reading, and you may want to go back and read, you know, this is 2014s, you may want to read 2013s, you may want to read 2011s, you may want to go back to, you know, when they originally started having some kind of difficulty. So this is going to take forever to open. Maybe it will. I think this comes up in HTML. It's nice sometimes to go right to the company's website. So just, you know, do a search, find Barnes and Noble, and on their website you'll probably be able to find and get access to annual reports there that would be in a PDF format, which I kind of like. It's a little, in fact, you could save it then. And then you can scroll through, and that way you could get, you know, 4 or 5 PDFs going for years, maybe even trying to open up that financial statement. My computer's wanting to die or something. It's just not wanting to cooperate. So I don't know if I'm going to get that open or not. And I think I'm going to just go down because I'm basically done, but go read those, okay? And if you have some questions, we'll get them open and I'll talk about it again, or more, okay? You know, take some time, do some reading. We can certainly have a dialogue about these things, okay? I had one student in class who was completely befuddled, but she actually came in and talked to me several times, and you know, we went over a lot of the financials and whatnot. It was really interesting. It was fun. It's stuff I enjoyed doing anyhow, and I think she got a lot out of it, and she ultimately wrote a good paper. So don't be afraid to engage me in dialogue about these things. You know, ask me, hey, is this important? Is this something I ought to include? Okay, or what do you think about this? Or you know, do you have any other ideas? Those types of questions are perfectly appropriate. So I'm kind of biding time right now because I'm waiting so I can click on this thing and actually shut it off. So I'm not going to, or if you want to quit listening now, you're welcome to. Hopefully I'll get this darn thing turned off. So at some time in the future. It's also there. Come on, baby.